NBC News correspondent Monica Alba following the Harris campaign. NBC's Dasha Burns is covering the Trump campaign. Also with us, Zerlina Maxwell, host of Mornings with Zerlina on Sirius XM, and Jennifer Horn, former RNC executive committee member and former New Hampshire Republican Party chair. Okay, Dasha, Trump has been physically absent from the campaign trail for, as we mentioned, over a week as his campaign's going on the attack, specifically against the newest entry, Tim Walz. What's going on?
Well, so his running mate, J.D. Vance, has been out on the campaign trail. He was asked about the former president's absence from the trail, and he claimed that they were doing a sort of divide and conquer strategy. So today we're not going to see Senator Vance out on the trail. But as you mentioned at the top there, we will see former President Trump at a press conference this afternoon. And it's interesting to watch this week as we've had that split screen of Harris and Walz out there and Vance out there, just the kind of difference in tone, where Harris and Walz are sort of going the cheerful, happy warrior route. Vance going another direction. He was asked about that. Take a listen to what he said.
You've been criticized as being a little too serious, maybe angry sometimes. What makes you smile? What makes you happy?
Well, I smile at a lot of things, including bogus questions from the media, man. Sometimes you got to take the good with the bad. And right now, I am angry about what Kamala Harris has done to this country.
And Anna, you've sort of watched this play out in real time as both Vance and Trump and the campaign overall are trying different strategies, different attacks on Harris and Walz to see what sticks, because this dynamic has changed, and it's changed in favor of the Democrats for now, and posing new challenges for the Trump campaign.
We've been following along with J.D. Vance solo out there, this sort of shadow strategy going where Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are traveling. And so what do we know about why Trump decided he needed to hold this event today at Mar-a-Lago? Is there a sense that he is frustrated with his own campaign?
It's a great question. I mean, those of us who have been watching him, who are covering him, we were a little bit perplexed about his lack of events this week, to be honest. And the Washington Post is now reporting that he has grown increasingly frustrated seeing these poll numbers, seeing sort of the Harris surge, and he's been complaining, asking friends about how his campaign is performing, according to the Washington Post reporting. So this might be his attempt to get back into the headlines, to grab the spotlight again, and we'll see if he makes any news this afternoon.
I remember as president, oftentimes we were told that he thinks he's his own best messenger. Perhaps this is his opportunity to try to steal back some of the spotlight and change some of the headlines. Monica, the Harris campaign has been defending attacks against Walz, specifically his military record, but they're really trying to keep the focus on the enthusiasm around the ticket, this joyful warrior messaging. How's that working?
Yeah, they're trying to really carry some of that energy that we saw in Philadelphia at the beginning of the week when they were first on stage together into these other key battleground states. And they're hoping that some of that enthusiasm will continue. But they're touting the fact that there are some large crowds turning out, especially compared to the kind of folks we would see at Joe Biden events earlier in the cycle. This is really turning the page and a completely different environment for Democrats. So they're trying to seize on that a little bit. You saw even the vice president pulling her plane up to that airport hangar last night and having this moment visually and optically that they're trying to lean into that complements exactly that joyful warrior mentality that is not just now being talked about by the campaign, but it's really being leaned into by the candidates and the nominees themselves. Here's a little bit about the vice president and Governor Walz had to say on that yesterday.
And understand, in this fight, as Tim Walz likes to point out, we are joyful warriors. Joyful warriors.
We're asking a fair shot. We're asking for health care and child care. We're asking for an education. We're asking for safety in our streets. That's what we're asking for.
So that's the contrast that they're going to be highlighting as they do continue in Michigan today. Then they're going to be heading out west to Arizona and Nevada for a multi-day swing where they're going to be targeting Latino voters in particular. But remember, it was Governor Walz who first populated this idea that the Republicans, that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were weird. They're trying to basically say we're the happy, joyful people. They're the weird and extreme ones. So that is sort of the dichotomy they're trying to seize on to see if that appeals to voters. voters.
The contrast in imaging is definitely striking when you look at these pictures of these huge rallies and lots of smiles and upbeat attitudes. And then you have J.D. Vance by himself out there hitting the campaign trail with just talking to reporters as opposed to holding big rally events. Thank you, Monica Alba, Dasha Burns, for bringing us the latest from the trail. Jennifer, let's talk a little bit about the increase in attacks on Walz. Is the strategy to hit him with all they've got while voters are still getting to know him, and how effective could it be?
Well, that's clearly the strategy, but I think in this particular case, it's not going to be very effective, and for a few reasons. I think that some of the attacks are shallow and easily proven to be either misleading or false, entirely. But more importantly than that is the energy that Walz has brought to this campaign is unbelievable. And it's something that so far J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have not been able to match. I think that is going to grow as they head into the convention. And that's something that's going to be very difficult at this point in the campaign to try to stop with these, really ugly and in most cases dishonest attacks.
Zerlina, Republicans are hitting Walz in part for his response to protests in Minnesota following George Floyd's death. But there's some new audio that surfaced of praise from Trump to Governor Walz back in June of 2020. So right after those protests really broke out, the riots had started. Take a listen to this.
I know Governor Walz is on the phone and we spoke. And I fully agree with the way he handled it the last couple of days. 3 days later, I spoke to the governor. The governor is, I think, on the call, and he's an excellent guy. And all of a sudden, and I said, you got to use the National Guard in big numbers. They didn't at first.
Does that negate the Trump campaign's entire line of attack?
Yes. Because you have a tape of Donald Trump saying literally the opposite thing. And to Jennifer's point, I think when your attacks can be easily disproven, they're very weak. And I think that what we're seeing right now is a contrast, right? A split screen of a campaign where Donald Trump needs to have a press conference at his own resort in order to capture media attention, and the Democrats really organically feeling excited and enthusiastic about voting and participating in this election. And the most important thing, it's not just that the rallies are big and that everybody is joyful and happy, but the important thing for the campaign is to translate that enthusiasm into early voting. Take your base, take all the names of all those thousands of people that are showing up at your rallies and make sure that they're early voting so that the home stretch of the campaign, you're focusing on those more sporadic, harder to get voters that aren't in your base. And I think that these rallies are amazing to see its history in real time, but it's important to translate that into winning on the ground.
Jennifer, I want to show something that happened yesterday during the rally for the Harris-Walz campaign. Watch this.
Donald Trump was just found guilty of fraud. 34 counts, to be exact. Hold on. You know what? Here, hold on. Here's the thing. The courts are going to handle that. We're going to beat them in November.
So she tamped down the lock him up chants. What do you read from that moment?
I think that they are just pitch perfect on their messaging and their presentation. The American people are exhausted by the ugliness, the dishonesty, the attacks, the misogyny, the racism that has been coming out of Donald Trump's mouth and his campaign and his administration for 8 years now. I think that what the message on that and what we see Tim Walz and Kamala Harris doing to try to keep their activists focused on what matters, on the issues that count, and trying to keep the demeanor of the campaign as positive and as upbeat as possible is exactly what the American people are looking for.
There was another moment, Zerlina, where VP Harris was interrupted last night in Michigan by about a half dozen pro-Palestinian protesters. Take a listen to how she responded to that.
here because we believe in democracy. Everyone's voice matters, but I am speaking now. I am speaking now.
So this was an issue we know that followed President Biden when he was still the Democratic nominee. What's your reaction, Zerlina, to how she handled those protesters?
I like the way that she handled these protesters. It's no surprise that you have protesters in Michigan talking about this very, very important issue. And I think that we all believe in democracy. And so people are going to raise their voices and talk about the issues they care most about. But I do think that it is correct in a moment like that, when you're in the middle of a speech, to sort of quiet that down so that you can focus on the content of the speech, and also to point out the contrast, as she did later on in the rally, between what Donald Trump will do on the issue that those activists care so much about and what she will do on that issue. And she's been a little bit different than the president on the issue of Gaza, calling for a ceasefire on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, really, really symbolic there in Selma. And so I think that if the activists want her to hear their message, they should listen to what she says about this issue. She obviously had strong remarks after meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, and I think that there should be a two-way dialogue between the campaign and the activists who care most about this issue.